And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have a bunch of new stories to talk about this week. As usual, we've got some new e-bikes to talk about. This time they're going to be coming from Ride1Up and HeyBike. We've also got some cool revival stories, like a comeback tour for both Juiced Bikes and Rad Power Bikes. So that should lift your spirits a bit if you've been bummed about those two companies. We're also going to talk about how the current fuel slash energy crisis situation is impacting transportation and how e-bikes might play a role in that. And then we're going to finish it off with a few stories about some larger micromobility in the form of some electric motos and some electric golf carts. So where are we going to start it off with this week, Seth?
All right, we're starting with Ride1Up turns popular e-bike into new platform with 3 models.
I am excited about this one because Ride1Up took the Vorsa, which is a model that they rolled out last year and was a pretty popular model. And they've basically turned it from a single e-bike into a platform of multiple bikes here. So the original was sort of like a hybrid commuter that could handle some light off-roading, and they've taken it in sort of both directions now. So there's still the original Vorsa, that's sort of the middle Goldilocks option, but they've added both a Vorsa Lite on the more commuter side and the Vorsa FT, which is like a fat tire, more adventure version of the same bike. And one of the things I like about this is that, first of all, there are a lot of things that are shared among all three models. So unlike with a lot of e-bike companies where it's kind of tricky to compare among their different models because everything is different, here there's a lot of similarities. So all three of these bikes, despite fitting very different types of riding, all three of them share the same motor. It's a 750 watt motor, 95 newton meters of torque, so pretty darn torquey. That's on the higher end of what we generally see. They both have Ride1Up's proprietary both pedal assist and torque sensor combination. They call it IntuiDrive. It's produced by Mevice, which is a factory that Electrek has visited in China and is probably one of the best factories for making these kind of precision components for e-bikes. Just incredibly top-notch, high-end production there. So I have a greater appreciation now whenever I see Mevice parts on bikes. So I'm glad to see that one there. And so there's a nice similar basic suite of performance components on these bikes. There's also, I should mention, a UL compliant battery on these bikes. So it's a 15 amp hour that puts it at 720 watt hours for a 48 volt battery. So, good to see all this like basic, higher performance parts. But from there is where the bikes start to differentiate. So as I mentioned, there's the Vorsa Lite, and that one comes with narrower tires. They're 2.2 inches. So, they're not like tiny urban tires, but they're certainly going to be, a little bit lighter, a little more efficient. The frame has also been slimmed down a bit. It no longer has that built-in rack that's like a welded component of the frame. It does have bosses, so you can add a rack if you'd like, but that helps shave a few pounds. It gets down to, I believe, 61 pounds, which is, for some people that might be strange to call that a light bike, but the Vorsa Lite is, I think, 11 or 12 pounds lighter than the Vorsa. So, when you're putting a big battery, a big motor, and everything else, these e-bikes tend to get heavy. So, it does do some lightening to take some of that out. But then if you don't mind the extra poundage, on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the new Vorsa FT. That's their fat tire version. It brings back that sort of built-in welded part of the frame in the back. It adds some pretty significant cargo capacity. I think it's 200 kilos or 440 pounds. Of course, we've got those fat tires like any self-respecting adventure off-road bike is going to have. And then I should mention that all of these have front suspension, so you're getting that at least a front suspension bike, even though they're all hardtails. But of course, it all comes down to pricing. The US e-bike market is a very price sensitive market. So in terms of pricing here, we're looking at really reasonable numbers. The Lite is priced at $14.95, the original Vorsa $15.95, and then the new fat tire Vorsa FT $16.95. So for class 3 capable 750 watt e-bikes with some pretty nice high end electronic components here, good motors, good torque sensors, that sort of thing. These are just incredibly reasonable prices. I mean, these are like 2018 Rad Power Bike prices, which were sort of like the thing that got everyone into e-biking to get a good solid e-bike for $1,500. Now
Yep.
there are, of course, more affordable bikes out there, but in terms of the parts you're getting here, I'm pretty excited about this. Oh, I forgot to mention that they also include the Apple Find My in built into the bike, which
That's nice.
is becoming more common. Yeah, and I love that for e-bikes. Like I always hide AirTags on my bikes, but it's a fairly easy thing to, if a thief is at least a little bit knowledgeable, to go around and find and remove an AirTag. But when it's built into the electronics of the bike, you basically have to destroy the bike to remove the AirTag. Now there are ways to defeat these things, put it in a Faraday cage or whatever, but it's nice to have just a little bit of extra peace of mind built in there, especially if you're in a city or somewhere where networks like the Find My is going to work really well. If your bike gets stolen in a forest, it's not going to help much. But anytime companies integrate these integrated trackers, it's a big thing in my book. And the nice thing about these is that unlike GPS, it doesn't A, drain your battery as quickly, and B, require some sort of ongoing service where you have to pay, a monthly fee to be able to have the cell data that interacts with the GSM, or the GPS, to be able to send that tracking data. So with the Apple Find My or Android's version, which I don't see on too many e-bikes, it just works without needing any extra services. So all in all, I'm pretty excited about everything that they're offering here. Ride1Up's been a stand-up company for many years. I think my first Ride1Up was in like 2018 or something. And they used to sell electric skateboards. I had one of those even before that. So, they've been around for a long time, pretty good customer service, and just, really sort of dedicated to the idea of affordable but still quality e-bikes for all. So really glad to see this addition to the lineup, and I am excited to hopefully get on these new e-bikes soon. With any luck, I'll be back in the US in about 2 to 3 weeks, so I'm looking forward to getting on one of these soon. What do you think of the new models here, Seth?
I love the idea. I love the modularity. But with modularity, like I can't help but think like, all right, I have a commuter bike, but it's winter now. Can I just buy some fat tires and turn it into the fat tire version? But I imagine that the frames and the forks and the everything else probably aren't set for that. Tell me I'm right or
Yeah,
wrong.
I mean, I guess you could always go narrower, right?
Right,
Like, um, you would need a really long axle, I guess, now that I think about it, but I
right.
don't see why, if you had a long enough axle, you couldn't put a narrower wheel. On the front would be fairly easy. On the rear, you just need to make sure the hub motor axle is wide. But yeah, I've never really thought about that. I mean, people change their tires from winter to summer, but
Well,
not
you're in Tel
necessarily
Aviv in
the
Florida,
width.
so that's probably not something that comes across.
Yeah, generally my tires stay the same all year round, but that would be a pretty cool idea to be able to go from fat to narrow.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
both of us.
like you're going to the beach, you want to take your bike to the beach, throw on the fat tires. You're just going for a long ride, narrow tires. Maybe that's a maybe that's something we'll see here in the future.
Yeah, I like that. I'm often from the perspective as someone who has many bikes, where I have to
Right,
remind myself not to be like, "Oh, just use your other e-bike,"
right.
"Don't you have 6 or 7?" So, yeah, but, most people only have 1 bike, and so I could see how that would be a really nice, thing to have, though you run into some significant hardware hurdles, like we were talking about, especially going the other way, trying to put fat tires on a non-fat bike.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. Obviously, I have various sizes and shapes of bikes. In fact, um, I put somebody off the other day because I was like, "Hey, I have to take another." Like, there's three slots in my garage for cars, and one is already e-bikes. And with the recent influx of spring and those Talaria / Surron type bikes coming in, I now have one thing for a car, which is woe is me. So
I love that the e-bikes are multiplying in your garage. It's like mitosis, they just keep going.
right, and the car gets the back seat.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
boo.
there's something poetic in that.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Heybike launches new lightweight commuter e-bike that retains the speed and power.
Yeah, I think you might have some interesting perspective on this one because I think
For
you saw
sure.
this one recently.
Yep.
So this is the new Heybike Venus, and this is definitely more of a commuter urban bike than sort of the Vorsa Light we were looking at, but in what I would say is a similar ballpark here. It's also built with that step-through frame. It's designed to be accessible. 750-watt motors are very common. This one's not quite as powerful, at least when looking at the torque. This one's 70 Newton meters, though still 70 is a certainly respectable amount of torque there. Heybike has also jumped on the UL bandwagon, as most e-bike companies, or at least the good ones now, are doing. So it's good to see that both the bike and the battery itself are UL compliant. That's increasingly important. Um, and let's see, going through the specs here, we've got a bit smaller of a battery than we were looking at with the Ride1Up, 680 watt hours. I mean, these are small differences. I think that's still going to be plenty for a lot of people. It's hard to give real range numbers. A lot of companies will say up to like 90, 100 miles, but 680 watt hours, you're probably still going to get like a solid 40 to 50 miles on pedal assist, and maybe 30, if you're riding real fast, 25 miles on throttle. Of course, things like terrain, weight, that sort of thing impact it. But generally speaking, it's still got a pretty good amount of battery there. It is a class 3 e-bike, just like we were looking at with the Vorso. So you're going to get those higher speeds. If you're going 28 miles per hour, you're going to be using the higher end of that power range. But for folks that keep it a little easier, you're probably going to be doing fine on battery there. This is, I think, a bit of a lighter weight version, though. The bike itself, I think, is in the 40s, or maybe the high 45 pounds. There we go. That's without the battery, so it's going to be in the low 50s once you add the battery in. So now we're really starting to get to what is considered to be a real lighter weight e-bike. There are super lightweight e-bikes in the 30s, 40 pounds, but to see something that comes in with the battery in the low 50s is still certainly on the lighter end of the spectrum here. So it's nice to see Heybike giving us something that's lighter, something that's a little more efficient, that sort of thing. What's interesting is the color scheme here certainly skews more to like the pastels. The one that you often see in like the marketing when they rolled this out was the pink one, and I think they have like sort of a champagne color, and like I don't want to like fall into old gender stereotypes, but it's slightly more on the feminine end here. They give us a gray one there, so us men can go with the titanium gray color. But this is not one of their sort of sleeker, shinier. They have a lot of like the bright orange and green and blue bikes. I wish they would have given us a little more options in the colorways here, because I'm just not sure that pink and gray fit all of the the different riders out there. Not sure why they went with those two colorways, but I am glad to see them going into this lighter end of the space, because also Heybike has long dominated, or I should say, of their bikes, they've long been dominated by fat tire designs, especially folders as well. So to give us something lighter, something more efficient, something that's more similar to a conventional commuter or a hybrid bike that a lot of more classic cyclists will be used to, I think is a good step in the right direction. And I think it's something we're starting to see more of as companies bring more options for classically styled e-bikes, not just some like 20 by 4-inch fat tire monsters that you can rip around like a motorcycle. So I'm pretty happy with this launch. I would have had this review out already. Unfortunately, my travel plans got a little messed up from the recent Iran war stuff. But like I said, I'll hopefully be back soon, and this is one of the ones that I'll be getting on pretty quickly once I'm back. But that doesn't mean we can't give you first impressions, because Seth, I believe you had a bit of experience with this model recently, right?
Yeah. My girlfriend and I took this around Deerfield Beach and the Pompano and Fort Lauderdale area. I think we put on like 60 miles on that thing over a couple days. She was
Nice.
on this bike and I was on another bike. Um, Loved it. There's a lot of things to love about this. It's got a really unique a throttle that's so subtle that you almost don't even notice it's there. but works really well. Um, it's not the throttle when you hit it is kind of like a kind of a slower ramp. Um, we kept it in class 2 mode. Um, it wasn't, immediately obvious how to put it into class 3, and 20 miles per hour was a fine speed for her. So we kept it there. But fantastic bike. The range was, pretty, I would say pretty close to what they state. I'm a huge Heybike fan since I have the Tyson up in Vermont, and it's been going 3 years strong now through the snow. So like, I can't say enough good things about that. I also currently have the Villain, and the snow just melted here. So we're going to give that a little review in a few days or weeks. So that's a little Surani type bike for 14-year-olds. So Heybike's just doing a lot of cool stuff. I like all their decisions. Obviously, I'm not going to be riding on a pink bike, but it worked well for my girlfriend. The torque was great. The sense, I think it's got dual cadence and torque sensor, so that was really well done. I don't think she actually used the throttle much, except maybe starting off in Florida. I have to say, Micah, in Florida, I don't know that I would have an e-bike in Florida. There's just no hills, but instead of going 15 miles per hour, we're going 20 miles per hour, which is nice in traffic. Although
Yeah.
the traffic on the streets there is bananas. So
Also, 60 miles on a pedal bike might have been slightly less enjoyable than 60 miles on an e-bike.
For sure. Yeah, I don't think that would have been realistic at all. But yeah, overall great bike, typical Heybike, great value for the money. $1,500 is, a low price for something this nice. Great commuter. So
That's
yeah,
great. So yeah, I'm excited to get on that pink bike myself.
yep. All right, let's move on. Juiced Bikes Revival. Here's our first look at the fresh new e-bike lineup.
Yeah, so this one has been like over a year in the making. Juiced Bikes, it's a company that's been around since early in the US e-bike marketplace. I would say like 2008, I think they launched something like that. Maybe 2009. And so, they were around for over 15 years. They went bankrupt a little over a year ago. They were bought by, maybe 2 years ago, but now they were bought by the team at Electrek e-bikes, which is the largest e-bike company in the US. And the goal was to basically revive the brand. And I think for the guys at Electrek, it was a chance to sort of pay homage to a brand that really helped kick off the e-bike space in the US, but also a chance for them to explore some higher power and a little more aggressive bikes than they would otherwise have rolled out under the Electrek name, right? Because Electrek, they make, at this point, they've got just about every type of e-bike out there. From cargo, commuter, lightweight, off-road, just about everything. But the one area that they don't have is a sort of like moped, light e-moto style e-bike, and that's what Juiced was always great at, and it seems like that's what they're doing here. Now, we don't have like full pictures of the bikes yet; these are still teasers. But what we can see from the images, these definitely look like sort of moped style bikes. It doesn't look like they just took the Scrambler frame or the Scorpion frame or something like that. It looks new, but we see rear suspension, we see a long bench seat, we see two riders on one bike. They've got those, obviously the 20 by 4-inch fat tires that are common on these moped style bikes. But we can see what looks like a return to form for Juiced's high power stuff. Even if we don't have full specs or anything like that. We also do have a little more information. So we've learned a little bit more. The new Juice team, first of all, it's headed up by the guy who was integral in developing the Electrek XP4, the currently best-selling e-bike in the US. And so Electrek has brought over Austin there. And so it seems like they're building a really strong product team, first and foremost, for Juiced. The other thing that Electrek has always been good at is customer service. So I'm sure they're bringing over, a pretty strong customer service team there as well. And so while we don't yet know exactly what these bikes have in store, we're starting to get a good general sense of the power, the frame style at least, and this sort of return to form for Juiced. We also got a little bit more background information on what customers can expect. They did tell us on the site that for those legacy Juiced bike owners, for those legacy models, unfortunately, the company's probably not going to be able to provide a lot of parts support. They do have, looks like, support literature that they link to on the site. But what they said is that, unfortunately, with the fall of Juice, a big part of that was related to financial problems with some of their suppliers, and so like suppliers basically weren't getting paid, and a lot of those bridges have been burned. So it's hard for the new Juiced bike to go back to some of those places and get parts. They also said that in sort of rebuilding the company here, they've discovered that some of those parts were not that great, and others like batteries weren't UL listed, and so a lot of the stuff they said they just wouldn't be comfortable, selling or offering in any capacity. So um, you'll probably, unfortunately, have to go to third-party providers to get some of those parts if you have a legacy bike. But the good news is that for anyone hoping to see a revival of Juiced, it looks like the company is well on its way. And until now, like, we knew that that was what Electrek wanted to do, but we hadn't had any real confirmation that there was much in the way of solid progress. And now we definitely see the progress. We see that the bikes are at least together enough to do photo shoots, and I would imagine that based on the sort of spring-ish timeline they're presenting here, because they again haven't given us any like solid information, but it looks like spring is on their minds, that we're going to be seeing some more information soon, whether it's either more teaser photos that they're going to start giving us a little more detail, or a full spec drop, something like that. So I'm like so here for whatever's coming. I'm excited to see it because it's been a long time in the making, and I just can't wait to see what this new Juiced is going to look like. What do you think, Seth? You excited?
Oh yeah, definitely excited. I'm with Michael Schmozelis in the comments asking, is Tor still involved with Juiced? He was really the brains that made Juice special. It doesn't sound like that's the case, but do you have a definitive?
I do not believe that he's still involved. Doesn't mean he's not. I just have not heard from anyone that he is still involved.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of the brains, the Steve Jobs of the Juiced situation. So it would be nice to, we've had lots of conversations with him. He was on the podcast too, wasn't he?
Yeah, a while ago he was. That was several years ago at this point.
Yeah. It would be nice to catch up with him. Yeah, these look great. The problem is, I think that they're taking the logo. It's been a little while. I am a little bit afraid that that they're going to come out with some stuff that's already in the marketplace. Obviously, Electrek is able to do some stuff with scaling that makes their bikes a little bit less expensive. I think Electrek is fantastic at making decisions about like what level of components to use that make the bikes they sell really compelling. And the service and support has been great. So hopefully all that comes with it. But I'm looking at these bikes and I'm like, like a Super 73 clone. We've seen those before. These kind of look a little bit familiar. I mean, this frame is a little bit different. Obviously, full suspension. We're seeing 20-inch fat tire. That motor doesn't look too burly back there. I'm not thinking it's going to be a 2 kilowatt or anything like Suron Killer. But it's something. It's probably going to be similar to a Scrambler or whatever. 750 watts with the quotation marks and the winks. But there's a lot of these in the marketplace already. I don't know that a beefed up brand and is going to guarantee success here. So it'll be interesting to see when these come out. I imagine if they're going to launch in spring, we'll probably get our hands on some here in the next month or so, right?
Hopefully, yeah. I don't have a lot of insider information there. I have a very small amount of insider information, but I do think that sooner rather than later we're going to start learning some more.
And is this coming through the PR team at Electrek, or do they have their own separate? entity.
It seems like they're separating it and making a division. Now, I believe that in the early days here, there's still some overlap,
Sure.
but it does seem like, these probably aren't going to be like juiced by Electrek or sharing like the customer service team. I think they're really trying to sort of capture lightning in a bottle twice and create like a new juiced in the using sort of the game plan and or the playbook, I should say, of Electrek when it was built up, and sort of learning from the successes and also avoiding a few of the mistakes. So I think that's another major asset that this new juiced is going to have going for it. My question, and I think it sort of builds off of what you were saying in terms of, is this going to be something different? What's it going to offer that other companies making these sort of moped style bikes don't? One of the biggest assets that Electrek has going for it, in addition to now having built up a pretty impressive team of bike folks for these designs, is just their massive purchasing power, which allows them to get really good parts at incredible prices and then immediately pass those savings on to the customer with really affordably priced bikes. And so that's only possible because they sell so many e-bikes. With this new Juiced brand, it's, the jury's out on what kind of sales volume we're going to see here. And so I wonder how much they'll be able to leverage that economy of scale there to be able to create some huge savings. It could be that they can go to these suppliers and say, like, this is juiced, but us, we're Electrek, and so give us the good prices here too, and that might work just fine. But it'll be interesting to see how much they can leverage those huge supplier relations they have, and the really good relationships they've built across all those different OEM providers.
Do we know the voltage on these?
That's a good question. Juiced was always the 52 volt, or not always, but for a long time they were the 52-volt company. They didn't start there, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see Electrek sticking with them. The only thing is that, like, what Electrek knows and loves is 48 volts, and
Right.
so if Juiced really did burn all those relationships, then it might not make sense for Electrek to try to come in and just stick with one more cell in series, which is what it is, and
Right.
realistically, it's a marginal difference if they can do a whole lot better with their own 48-volt part suppliers.
Yeah, it doesn't occur to me that they definitely need to do that, especially with so many 48-volt components out there.
Yeah,
But
it was a nice little marketing thing for Juiced. I mean, it was, slightly better. It's 7% more powerful, 7% more battery, 7%
right.
faster. If,
I mean, kick it up to 60 or 72 volt now, then maybe we'll
then talk to me.
right. Because you can drop the amps, you get like different size cabling. There's some real
Yes.
advantages
Seth
to
doesn't
that.
get out of bed for less than 60 volts.
I don't. I really don't. I can't. All right, let's move on, and we'll talk about the higher voltage stuff here in a minute. Rad Power Bikes. Speaking of back from the dead, Rad Power Bikes sale completed. New owner to build e-bikes in the U.S.
Yeah, so this is another comeback story, a quicker comeback because it didn't take a year here. And this one, I'm I'm still sort of withholding judgment until we learn a little bit more. But what we know for now is that a company called Life EV, which is based in Florida and is known to sort of buy up struggling or bankrupt e-bike brands, has completed their purchase of Rad Power Bikes. When we last talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago, it was still had to go before a bankruptcy court. And so it was approved. Now things have been transferred to Life EV. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of the Rad people, from what I understand, most or basically all did not make the jump with the company, just like the assets and the inventory and all those things did. Um, at least all of the people that I know at Rad are no longer there. I have seen reports swirling that Life EV is trying to rehire some of those folks, so we'll see how many eventually make it. Because at the end of the day, as we've often seen, e-bike companies are really a reflection of the people, not just the bikes there. There are a lot of e-bikes out there, but the people that know how to run these companies make a huge difference. So I hope that we can see some of these Rad folks stay on. But what we're looking at are some pretty big changes in how Rad might look moving forwards. For one thing, Life EV says they're going to leverage US based manufacturing. Now, in actuality, what that probably means is US based final assembly. none of these components used in e-bikes are produced in the US, at least not in any large scale. So, you've got Korean battery cells, Chinese motors, brakes from Taiwan, like everything comes from every other country. And there's very little. I think there's, some shop in Oregon making wooden bike fenders, but like there's not a lot of
And
bicycle
stickers.
production in
Don't
the
forget the
US.
stickers. We
The
need stickers.
stickers, there you go. Yeah, those are printed at FedEx office, so we got something. Um, this is probably going to be, assembly. If it reaches that point, it's not clear where they're going to be doing it. They said somewhere in the center of the country, so it sounds like there's still some work to be done there in setting up this US based production. It also looks like the Life EV team is going to try to leverage the existing Rad retail stores to potentially try and sell some of the other brands they bought up, such as Serial One, which they bought a few years ago. And so, it's good to see that Rad is surviving in some shape or form. It's unclear what that's going to mean for the bikes themselves, though. It looks like we may be seeing new styles of bikes. We may be seeing, new frames, new models, that sort of thing under this updated Rad name. But I think a lot of what we came to know and love about Rad Power Bikes might not make the jump. Now, that doesn't mean it won't be as good. Maybe it will. I'm like I said, I'm sort of withholding judgment here because we just don't have a lot of hard information here. It's not like what we just talked about with the juice situation, where we know that there's a like tried and tested bike team behind these that have done this before, and that we've already seen the bikes themselves, or at least teasers of them. In this case, we don't know a lot about Life EV other than that they sort of buy up struggling e-bike brands. We haven't seen any evidence of US based production. It sounds like that might still be in the setting up phase here. And there's just a lot of unknown. So I hope this goes well. It could be a great situation if that means that they can leverage this sort of just-in-time assembly to basically put together bikes when they're needed, send them out to retailers, send them out to DTC customers, that sort of thing. But this is not an easy undertaking to uh, start up US based assembly and try to fulfill the promises, or at least sort of step into the giant shoes that are left by a brand as massive and with such a legacy as Rad Power Bikes. So we'll have to watch and see how this one goes, I would say.
Yeah, and so the headquarters of that place is in Deerfield Beach, which is just south of Boca, where you go. Your family's there. I actually rode by the headquarters, and on the bikes. It was a Saturday, so nobody was there. But it's a corporate office building. It's very corporate. Doesn't look like anything specific. I would have strolled in if it was a work day, but I didn't. So
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty generic, like office park kind of
yep,
thing. It's probably like, an orthodontist office 2 doors down kind of
something like that. Yeah.
situation. Yeah, so we'll have to swing by. Hopefully next time I'm there, I'll be able to go in and talk to some folks. It seems like that might be more office work and less operations.
Yep.
Though I have seen a van parked there with like their logo on it, so maybe they move some bikes in the van.
With a Rad bike logo on it, or
No, the
Life.
Life EV logo on the side.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know what their operations look like. This company used to produce their own bikes at least at one point and had local assembly. So
Hmm.
now it seems like those bikes are all sold out on their website, and I'm not sure how long, whether that's months or years they've been like that. And so there's a lot evolving with this new Rad and the Life EV company that bought them.
We'll watch out for that. All right. As gas prices rise, there's a cheaper answer for many people than an electric car.
Yes, spoiler alert, it's an electric bike, or an electric motorcycle or electric scooter.
Didn't see that coming.
Basically, yep, it's a shocker. I like to keep a twist. I'm the M.
Yep.
Night Shyamalan of electric bike podcasts. Um, so yeah, we get into this conversation, every time there's a Middle East war, which is unfortunately not
Sadly.
infrequently. And the refrain is always like, "Oh, don't like high gas prices, get an electric car." And like, okay, there's something to that, right? Like, if you have an electric car, you're somewhat insulated from this, at least in terms of your personal fuel costs, though it impacts many other things that we use every day. But the issue here is that most people can't just go out and buy a new electric car, right? Or even a used electric car. Like most people that are struggling because gas has gone up another 50 cents or another dollar per gallon, that's not the kind of person with the money for a new car. But I think what gets missed so often in this conversation is that there are other electric alternatives that can have you energy independent, and you can still keep your gas car, and you can use it for the times that a bike or a scooter or motorcycle aren't the right option. And so I think this needs to be a bigger part of the conversation, that so many people have discovered, even before this fuel crisis, so many people have discovered that an e-bike makes a great sort of quote unquote second car, or a car replacement for many trips. There are some people like myself that have gone car free, and if that works for you, that's great. But for most people in the US, I would say, car free is a tough lifestyle unless you just live like, in the center of a big urban center. So for a lot of people, let's say you've got, your Honda Civic, it's fine. It's, you've got it paid off, and you don't want to buy a new car or get rid of it. But if you spend $800, $1,000, $1,500 on a new e-bike, you might be able to leave your car in the garage half of the time, and suddenly your fuel bill's cut in half, your maintenance costs are way down. Unfortunately, you're still paying insurance or everything else that goes with it, but you're not paying for parking if you're going into the city with your e-bike, that sort of thing. And so I think this just needs to be a bigger part of the conversation. In general, we've already seen the way e-bikes can be great second vehicles, but especially in times like this where we're looking at higher gas prices, the potential for significantly higher gas prices, and how instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars to replace a vehicle that works but is, unfortunately burning a lot of gasoline, that maybe the smarter option, especially in the short term of the next few years, is adding an e-bike into the mix. When your gas car eventually dies, it's a good time to consider switching to electric because it is an improvement. But you can't just expect a whole bunch of people to go out during every fuel crisis and buy a new electric car, because it's not in the budget for most people. But $1,000 is much closer to the transportation budget that a lot of people can deal with. So I just wish that this was a bigger part of the conversation, and then it didn't always turn into this like, oh, don't like gas prices, buy an electric car, because that doesn't fit so many people. I don't know. I mean, you're an e-bike and e-car person. What do you think here's the
Well, I can't help but think, like, why don't the insurance companies offer an incentive for getting an e-bike? Like, if you're going to be out of the car, like, health companies will give you incentive to get an Apple Watch or go to the gym or whatever. Why don't car insurance companies give you $1,000 budget to buy an EV, or sorry, buy a electric bike, or knock $100 a month off your insurance because you're going to be riding around on a bike and you can't really cause that much. I mean, you could hurt yourself obviously, but you can't really cause that much damage. Car repairs in the thousands of dollars. Like most e-bikes, you're not going to wreck them, first of all, because you're not going as fast as whatever as much, but also like, you can't cause $10,000 worth of damage to a $1,000 e-bike. So
yeah, like worst place you replace a wheel.
right. So uh, I'm surprised, and I wonder who could, like, maybe it's you and I, but who can like lobby insurance companies to give people who own an e-bike a little bit of money off their insurance bills. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would be huge. And we're starting to look at states that are writing up insurance requirements and things like that for e-bikes. Now that specifically I think is a bit of
Bananas.
a, yeah, the technical term for it. But as insurance becomes closer and closer to the realm of e-bikes, perhaps integrating them in that way, certainly with incentives, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess, like, in the state of New Jersey, if you have to insure your e-bike, well, just say, hey, look, if I'm going to spend half my time on an e-bike, why don't you drop my insurance rate? And, maybe one insurance company is like, the actuaries are like, pull the numbers and like, hey, that actually is going to reduce our costs. So why not give them an incentive to do that? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And as e-bikes become more and more popular, it's, like a marketing advantage for some of these insurance companies that like switch to us, and, you can save some money with your e-bike kind of thing.
Right. And maybe you have to put a sensor that you're actually using it or something. Those guys are very data driven, but
Yeah, numbers are important.
yeah. All right. This one I like. Fast compact e-motos are getting even more affordable with the Yozma IN10 Pro Plus launch.
Yeah, this is kind of wild because this category that we often talk about as like, the Sur-Ron, the Talaria category is generally dominated by bikes that range in the 3 to 4.5 thousand ish dollars. But as more of these simpler, like less refined, but still pretty impressive performance Asian competitors come in, we're seeing really great prices. So this is the new Yasma IN10 Pro Plus. It's a mouthful. And it launched at $1,899, which is kind of crazy for the specs. I mean, we're talking 5.5 kilowatts of power, 220 Newton meters of torque, 50 miles an hour. The battery's a little bit small for the size of the bike. It's 1.6 kilowatt hours. I mean, it's not a small battery, but if you're going 50 miles an hour, you're going to run through that pretty quickly. I think they claim like 55 or 60 miles. That's, yeah, that's downhill with a tailwind at 10 miles an hour. But, even if that's the area they saved money, like if you're not going far, like, you're here for a good time, not a long time,
Right.
then you get everything else with this bike. And that being said, we don't know what kind of build quality we're looking at. Like if you get a Sur-Ron or a Talaria, they're pretty well made. I mean, these are small motorcycles for all intents and purposes, and they're built like that. The Yasma here, I mean, it looks pretty good from the images. Have you gotten one yet yourself, Seth,
I've
to
gotten
check out?
two actually, and they're in my garage and filling up the car space right now.
Nice. Are they assembled? Have you got a chance to look at the
They're
quality yet?
assembled and they're ridden, and they're going to be on video pretty soon.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So you can tell us, what do you think about, because you've seen Talaria, Sauron, you've seen these, you've seen
Yep.
Cake. Like what are your thoughts in terms of the production quality here?
So for the cost, it's incredible. Like they're fantastic. Um, they work. Like that's, for the price, you're like, do they even work?
Does it turn
And
on?
yes, they do. They turn on and they're they do what you expect them to do. And they have like solid hydraulic brakes. Um, you know, the Heybike Villain actually has like that. The name's escaping me now, but like if you fall off the bike, the
The kill
magnetic
switch?
kill switch, right? These kind of bikes in this like price range are really like impressing the hell out of me because this is the price of a like an Aventon, like a solid Aventon bike, that
Yeah.
goes 20 miles per hour. And this thing goes 50. Like it can go on the highway. I mean, it should absolutely never go on the highway for any reason.
Should mention these are not street legal.
They're
Yes.
not even like sidewalk legal. They're like, there's just no place where these are legal. I think um we like
On public
Lunicycle.
streets, we should say.
Yeah,
Yeah, like these are
Lunicycle.
dirt. Yeah.
Yeah, like in the backyard, behind closed doors. Like, yeah,
Behind
just
closed gates.
right. Not in the public view of any sort because these are so the Yasma is so there was a couple bikes that came out that were like kind of broke the mold. The first one was Tudio, and that was like sold on Amazon for like $12.99 or something. People were flipping out. You can get a Bluetooth dongle for like $25 that actually makes the Tudio go even faster. That Bluetooth dongle works on the Yasma as well, and it actually works on the HeyBike because it's all the same controller. And actually, the bike form factor is pretty similar, but each manufacturer makes a couple decisions that kind of turn the bike into a little bit of a different thing. The Yasma, I think the IN10 original kind of topped out at like 35 miles per hour, 37 miles per hour, while the HeyBike Villain goes right up to 50 miles per hour, and those little like dinky wheels. And this one also goes 50 miles per hour. So, but it's got a bigger wheel set. That's kind of the big difference here. I mean, it's the same frame, just bigger wheels, a little bit bigger brakes. We noticed. There's subtle differences all around, but for the most part, this is kind of the same as I think they're selling it for like 1,200, the IN10 regular on the website right now, which is crazy. Like a $1,200 bike that can go, really fast. the thing I think about is like, all right, what if you gave everybody one of these? Like very inexpensive, like life would be pretty interesting, you know? Like I think it would be a fun way to live. I know obviously 50 miles per hour for kids is dangerous. But you know, let's make some of these street legal. They're 50 miles per hour. They can go around cities. 1.6 kilowatt hour. You know, I kind of laughed at the 50-mile range thing. It's not 50 miles, especially with those tires. But you put some enduro tires on those, and you do some other efficiencies things, and you might get up to 50 miles per hour or 50 miles on one of these smaller batteries. Probably not, but you know, 30, 40, something like that. And all of a sudden you've got a nice little urban commuter situation for, 1,500 bucks. Come on. That's just
At this
asking to
point,
be.
we would like to remind listeners that this is
Yes,
not a street legal
definitely
motorcycle.
not street legal. I'm just saying, like, if you can make a dirt bike, with great suspension, by the way, front and back, you can add some air to it if you're a bigger guy like me on a kid's bike. But it's kind of crazy what you can get for 1,200. This is 1899. Um, it's just a crazy situation. Like my mind just like reels at like, all right, so we can now make for, let's say, $1,500 a bike that goes almost highway speeds, has range that can take you around a city, like, or commutable distances. Like, why aren't we getting some of these like homologated for city roads with license plate holders, or whatever needs to be done? It's just a really impressive. I mean, I don't know how they make them so cheap with the tariffs. I kind of believe that Yozma is just going to be like, oh, our tariff bills due. We're now
No, Yzma.
Gizmo, right? and we didn't, and we're making orange bikes. Like I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know how they get the prices down so low, but these are really like pretty high quality bikes. I mean, I wouldn't let my kid on one of these if it didn't have good brakes. Like, and this thing has great brakes. It has, um, it feels pretty solid. It's not like rickety. The like the Yasma is definitely higher quality than the Tudio, I would say. We took a look at one of those, and I was like, I don't feel good about this bike. But Yasma's got kind of a lot going for it. It's got a good name out there. I think Sir Romster did a video on this one. It's like kind of a good bike, and I know the kid ride outs with these things are super illegal, and people are worried about safety, and the kids doing wheelies down Main Street aren't helping anybody. But I just have to wonder, like, all right, like I'm trying to think of the name that built a street legal version. The
Zero.
Barcelona company.
Oh, Stark.
Stark, yeah. So Stark, obviously way more expensive, way more powerful. But they took their off-road bike and they said, all right, what is it going to take to make the street legal? They made a street legal version, and it's, took some effort, some resources, some money. But like, I kind of feel like, why not make some street legal versions of these things and, put a plate holder on it, serial number, make it legal in New Jersey, whatever the heck they have to do. And like, it would be a really nice way to get around town, I have to say. Like, we're riding these things on the trails. We're very rarely on the street, but it's just a great platform, and the price is just insane. I have a Talaria Triple X that I think is a great bike. It came with enduro tires. It was, that was a big wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It has the brown wire that you cut to get full power. This one you need to actually buy a $25 Bluetooth dongle. But like these things are out there. It would be nice if there was a way to make these legal. And obviously, if this was to become legal, I would encourage people to get turn signals and fully vet the bike for street legalness. But I really like this thing. It's blows my mind.
Well, it does sort of raise the question of how far will this industry continue to go in the future? Because, what we're looking at now is sort of where e-bikes were in, 2017, 2018, the very early stages,
Yep.
at least for the e-moto industry now I'm talking about. And so if we already have this many interesting, pretty good quality, affordable companies, I mean, this could really go into some interesting directions. That being said, the biggest focus of regulatory crackdowns right now is this space, the e-moto space of these sort of above electric bicycles, but below sort of a real motorcycle. And so you have to wonder, is this area going to be permitted to bloom and sort of reach that level of some really nice, affordable street legal bikes? Or are we going to see some pretty heavy-handed regulatory crackdowns that nip this in the bud and don't let it develop into a much more sort of diverse and perhaps safer, higher level of refinement e-motos than some of the earlier, slightly janky designs that we saw over the past few years. I think that is going to be determined in the next 12, 18 months as we see a lot of these new laws come down.
Yeah, I'd like to be happily surprised by some of these, and I don't know what I would be expecting. Like, the Talaria Triple X came out with a 20 mile per hour top speed, right? That's why they put road tires on it. That's why they said, hey, this is kind of an e-bike, right? Like it's got a throttle and it goes 20 miles per hour. That's kind of what your scooters and e-bikes that you ride on the streets do. With the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Here's the brown wire tutorial. Um, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. Like, you know, 50 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour. That's not gonna like that's not gonna make parents happy. That's not gonna make, the drivers down Main Street happy. I don't know what it looks like. Um, but it would be nice if there was like a class 4 e-bike, which was, 35 miles per hour top speed. Um, you know, like you have to be 16, you have to have a driver's license, something like that. I feel like there's like a middle ground for another tier between fast e-bikes and motorcycles. Maybe even just follow the NEV kind of thing. Isn't the neighborhood electric vehicle maybe like an add-on to that? Maybe are those 30 or 35 miles per hour? I guess it depends on the state.
Well, NEVs, which like the legal category is low speed vehicle, are allowed to go up to 25, but they're allowed to operate on roads up to 35. So,
Gotcha.
but they are 25-mile-an-hour limited.
And then mopeds have different things in different states. Some states classify them as motorcycles.
Yeah, yeah. Moped is its own regulatory nightmare.
Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but like the bottom line is kids want these, like 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds. Like this is kind of the hottest thing right now. And I can see why, because I want one. And like if you don't have a car, like this is an amazing way to get to your friend's house, through the woods or whatever. So gonna have to deal with it somehow. Hopefully that's not making them totally illegal.
Yeah, to be continued.
To be continued, and we'll have some of these reviewed here in the next couple weeks. All right, and our final story is more U.S. cities are allowing golf carts on the road, even if they aren't 100% street legal.
This is kind of an interesting one, and I thought this would happen sooner, like a couple of years ago, as low speed vehicles were becoming more popular. But I'm glad to see it's finally catching up. So for electric golf cart or any golf carts, but now they're pretty much all electric, to be considered street legal for road use, at least at the federal level, they have to meet guidelines for a category known as low speed vehicles or LSVs. And it's not that difficult. There's about 12 or 15 or so regulations they have to meet. A lot of them are pretty simple, needs DOT seatbelts, DOT windshield, reflectors, can only go up to 25 miles per hour, and a few other things. A couple of the requirements are a little trickier. It needs to have like new electric cars, that pedestrian warning system, which is that like UFO landing noise whenever it goes slowly kind of thing. But most golf carts in the US meet some of these, but not all of these, especially like, the backup camera and the pedestrian warning sounds, that kind of stuff. And so most golf carts are technically not street legal as low speed vehicles. That being said, we're starting to see this interesting trend where many cities around the country are basically creating their own softer regulations that allow people to register golf carts for local use, often similarly to low speed vehicles on roads up to 35 miles per hour. In many of these cases, what they basically require are most of the legal requirements for low speed vehicles as written in the federal motor vehicle safety standards, but not necessarily all of the trickier ones, especially things like the electronic warning, the backup cameras, etc. So we've got a few examples here in the article if you check it out, but Galveston is one that recently published these new requirements for golf carts, and they're basically like sort of the common sense things. They need headlights, taillights, reflectors, parking brakes, seat belts, turn signals, the kind of things that you would want on a non-car, but at least car-like four-wheeled vehicle. But they don't go all the way to meeting the federal requirements for a low-speed vehicle. But for a lot of cities like Galveston, that's enough. And so you can still register them locally. You can get a little golf cart license plate, and you can drive these around the city on streets posted up to 35 miles per hour, which for a lot of cities are the majority of streets. Like if you look at big cities like New York City, it's all of the streets are posted 25 miles per hour or less. And so it's really cool to see many cities across the country, and we're talking coast to coast. Galveston here is just one of the more recent examples, but I've got a few in the article there. But it's cool to see that many cities are coming around to this idea that there's this in-between category between electric bicycles or other micromobility, electric scooters, motorcycles, and full-size cars. That, there's for the kind of people that are like, what do you do when it's raining? They don't want to like get separate rain gear and ride an e-bike. Well, with a golf cart, for a light rain, you're usually fine with just the roof on it. But for heavier rains, you put one of those vinyl door kits on a golf cart, and now you've got a weather sealed four-wheeled vehicle that you can drive around town. A lot of golf carts easily fit four people. You can get 6-seaters, 8-seaters. So, this can be a family vehicle. You can take your kids to school on it. There are a lot of people that do take their kids to school on it. Something I see all the time when I'm in Florida. People
I was just going to say,
basically,
these things
yeah,
are everywhere in Florida. Even your family, I think, has one, right?
exactly. Yeah. So my sister's family, they have a golf cart. There's a development near where my parents live on the other coast of Florida. It's called oh my gosh, it's escaping me now, of course. Is it
Are you talking about the
Bayshore?
villages?
Not the villages. It's this new like solar powered green community.
Oh yeah,
And they're
we did a story on that, I think.
Yeah, they're really big on incorporating golf carts into like the planning. And so a lot of the houses have they have two garage doors, but one is smaller. And so there's like a little golf cart part of the
That's
garage
hilarious.
and then a single car garage next to it.
That'd be
And
good for
so like
e-bikes
golf
too.
carts are, yeah, they're like a really big part of this. If you go to like the Publix there are literally dozens of golf carts in the parking lot because people just like drive 2 miles from their house to the supermarket and back in their golf cart. And so I think it's really cool to see around the country a larger adoption of these vehicles. Unfortunately, golf carts are still fairly expensive. I don't know if you've looked at golf cart prices recently, but it's hard to find a new one for under $10,000, which I think is kind of crazy.
Are you talking about AliExpress or?
No, local,
Uh,
yeah. If you go on AliExpress, you can for like $20 on a smile, I'll get you a golf cart. But yeah, if you got any like golf cart dealer in the U.S., these are pretty expensive.
right.
So unfortunately, they don't have the huge cost advantage compared to cars. I mean, they're cheaper than an electric car, certainly fueling as well. But it's not like an e-bike where you can spend $1,000 and get a great like electric XP4 or something. These are pretty expensive, but they have so many other advantages over cars that I'm glad to see them being offered in more cities as a street legal way to get around and a real alternative to just putting more and more cars on the road, especially on slower streets.
Yeah, I mean, you could just get a Chevy Bolt and take the doors off, right? Like that's.
But it's not as much fun. It's hard to
I don't
like
know.
talk to your neighbors as you go by through a
Right.
doorless Chevy Bolt. See, one looks like fun and like easygoing, and the other looks like you lost at a demolition derby.
Right. Yeah, so I fully agree, but I think this is the bigger idea is like this is like a gateway drug, you know? Like everybody has these golf carts from the golf course, right? And they're like, "Why the heck can't we drive these on the road?" And I'm just going to go on the road a little bit from the golf course to my house and like what's the big problem? And like the mayor's got a golf cart, so I'm going to have a golf cart and he rides on the road and I ride the road. So this might be a gateway to a low speed vehicle adoption is what I'm hoping, or what I'm, kind of my bigger picture thing on these things, which I think is a fantastic development. We're looking at here. Is this the Citroen?
No, this is the Gem,
Oh, the Gem.
the newest version of the Gem. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is a big improvement over the Gems of yore. Um,
Yeah.
it looks actually like a car.
Yeah, they've gotten pretty slick looking. They're still insanely expensive. Now they're owned
Right.
by Wave, I believe, instead of Polaris.
Man, they've been passed around like a something.
The town bicycle.
Yes.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so that's interesting. I think Gem was originally like part of Chrysler or something, weren't they? Maybe not. I'm thinking
That I
Peapod or
don't
something.
recall.
Anyway, great to see this happening. Obviously in Florida, Galveston, places where there's no snow, it's very easy to have one of these open vehicles. It's more fun to ride around in. Hopefully, it's a gateway to more low-speed electric vehicles in places where they just make a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move to comments. Got quite a few. You got a few more minutes if you want to put a comment in. DTC platform is convenient and economical, but what happens when you need service or warranty work done if you aren't mechanically inclined? Direct to consumer is what DTC stands for. That's the trade-off, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much limited to your local bike shops if you're not someone that wants to do that work yourself. I always recommend people learn to work on their bikes when they can, but not everyone wants to get their hands greasy or has the time to do that. So it is good to have a good relationship with your local bike shop, but also a lot of direct to consumer companies now are partnering with local bike shops so that you can actually buy the bike there. First, you can test ride it, then you can buy it there, and then you know where to go for service and support. And then they have a relationship with that company so that they can quickly send out parts and that sort of thing. That's not every bike shop is like that, but so many of them now are becoming part of these larger, very distributed dealer networks for the D2C companies.
Yeah, I'm noticing that in a big way. And we're actually like a hardware store down the street or the next town over is now selling e-bikes and Surons and stuff. So, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna service these things. And I'm like, okay, let's see how that goes. But
Yeah, definitely.
it's interesting to see them embrace that stuff. I like all the bike shops around here have gone from we don't touch e-bikes to bring them on. So and Taking Back Mod says he built a stealth bomber clone. Are stealth bombers still a thing? I remember that was kind of like the first Surani type
Yeah,
bike
that
where
brings me back over a decade. Wow. Talk about a blast from the past.
yeah.
Yeah, those were very early, yeah, long predating Surons, but of that style of off-road electric bike. Those were actually of bicycle style, at least. They had bicycle pedals. You could really pedal them, but they usually had like a 2000 2500 watt hub motor in back that was like, the size of like a dinner platter.
I feel like they got bigger than 2 kilowatt though. I feel like they were like, I remember there was like 4 and 8. Like when we went to Interbike in Reno, I feel like there were a couple like crazy bikes. Remember that like Tiger King guy? Yeah, that like fat tire bike. I can't
Yeah.
remember what that was specifically.
Yeah, those were I forget what it was, like Lonnie or something. I forget what the Chinese company was that he was importing from, but those were
Right.
definitely stealth bomber clones. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess the nowadays version of that would be like the Bonnell. Do you know that bike, the Bonnell 902 or something?
Oh no, that one escapes me.
Yeah, it's kind of a. It looks like. I mean, the idea is that it looks like a mountain bike, but it's actually a stealth, motorcycle basically. We talked about Torah, Juiced. What's the MacBook Neo of e-bike? So Apple, as many of our readers know, if they've also Read9to5 Mac just released a new line of MacBooks, kind of like a low cost, cut out some of the nice things like a backlit keyboard, and has kind of a low RAM, slow SSD. Getting a little nerdy, but what is that of? So like high quality, but low components, I would say. I would
Yeah, like somewhat
probably
muted
say,
performance.
yeah, I'd say Electrek probably.
Yeah, I would even say to like get even more granular, I would probably say the Electric XP Lite,
Like,
which is the Lite 2 now, is probably the MacBook Neo of e-bikes, in that it comes from a big respected company. It's got like the support and service of it, but you give up some performance. You only get one gear instead of seven. You only get 20 miles per hour instead of 28. Like, you hit all the metrics and you bring them back a little bit, but you get it from a respected company, and
yeah,
something that should work pretty well.
yeah, and also Electric's probably the biggest in the business. So, all right, we have a series of comments from Michael Sprinzelis. Juice was the first e-bike I saw to use 52-volt batteries. Electrek is a good company. I hope they keep Juice as a more powerful brand. Yeah, the 52-volt was kind of like part of the branding exercise. It was like a little bit faster than the rest. And if
Yeah.
not 52 volts, how about 72 volts? A man after my own heart. High amp, low voltage means more heat. At risk of seeming negative, if Rad can't support current owners, I won't miss them. Yeah, that's kind of a downer that they're not supporting. I mean, I almost feel like it would be a way to like not only bridge like past customers with current customers, but like you might even make money on them. Like if they're not coming to you for, I mean, if they're coming to you for warranty stuff, you're going to lose money. But like if they're just coming for parts, like, sell them the off the shelf parts that came with the Rad bikes 5 years ago. Like people are going to,
Yeah, assuming they have access to them even.
right.
Could be a juiced situation.
Well, I mean, they could probably just source something that works or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, it's probably like a big headache. The EV car is not cheap if you have to use public chargers. The PHEV bicycle will always be cheaper. Plug-in hybrid, he's saying, is that you use your legs as well, not gas. I'm pretty sure that's a joke. I still own and drive a car. Thanks to e-bikes, in 13 years, I put on 20,000 miles on the car. I think a lot of people are in that boat. If you if you can go somewhere on an e-bike, under 5 miles, 10 miles, it's a much better experience, and you're probably not losing much time. In fact, if you think about parking situations, you can ride right up to the venue, the school, the grocery store, instead of parking in the parking lot. You don't have to stop at red lights. No, I'm just kidding. So there's some advantages. Yeah, I didn't say that. That was a blip. We got hacked. Insurance companies won't offer any discounts if physical injury is included in the policy. That's a downer way to look at it, but probably correct. Simple answer to why we don't get more cheap road legal e-bikes is Department of Transportation regulations. I have a feeling
pretty much.
that's part of it, if not all of it. Carl in San Diego says nothing to comment on today, but thanks for the news. Thanks for commenting. We were about to call the police to make sure everything was okay over there, Carl. So thanks for that. Susan McLaughlin 9861 says these e-motos are really helping to make the case for license registration and insurance, something that the cyclists don't want. It just seems that the e-bike community is shooting itself in the foot. Yes, there should be a delineation. I agree. E-motos over here, e-bikes over here. Let's not confuse them. Like if you want to punish the e-motos, don't punish the e-bikes. You know what I mean?
Like there's still great tools. Like, I'm a big fan of these e-motos for what they're built for. And if they can be brought into a legal, framework for road use, then that's even better. But yeah, like, I love all e-bikes, but you're right, that delineation is important, because not screwing up everything we've built with street legal class 1, 2, 3 bikes is incredibly important, even while we continue to innovate on higher power models.
Michael Spoonzelis, I like the idea of low-speed vehicles for some city streets, but it would be scary in big cities. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine a golf cart in New York City. I feel like you would probably just not be taken seriously. Like a cab would just cut you off, and I don't know. Maybe I'm
So I
being.
drove those Wink cars in New York City, like the ones you can put an elbow out of each window. They're so small.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And yeah, it was a little bit disconcerting to like look up at the buses and vans from your little tin can. But
I mean, people are
there's
riding bikes
something,
around, so
yeah, though I feel like on a bike I can almost wiggle my way out of dangerous situations better, you know what I mean? Or I can just bail. Like you can't bail out of a micro car as well.
yeah. And he says the same. Having driven commercially in New York City, I wouldn't feel safe, even a 25 miles per hour limit in a golf cart on New York City streets. I feel safer on an e-bike. Yeah, probably. Oh, Carl says, just read that Zero is selling their dirt bikes direct to consumer. So I guess that's news. I'm sure we talked about that, right?
Yeah, so that's a fairly new development that now they're sort of taking the Sur-Ron approach for their Sur-Ron style bikes that you don't have to just go to a Zero dealership for it, which makes sense because the people that are wanting to buy those are, you know, the guys that want to ride a Sur-Ron. They just want a slightly nicer one.
Right. And but those are not street legal, right?
No, they're still not street legal. Not in the US, I should say. They are street legal in Europe.
So do they come with a VIN number? Is there a way to make them street legal? Is it like future upgradable? Is it like, can you go in some jurisdictions and maybe because they have a VIN? Because I don't know, is there some benefit to getting a Zero?
So I'm sure they have a frame number that is basically the equivalent of a VIN, but to be technically street legal and meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards, the VIN has to be formatted in a certain way. It has to come from a factory that has a WMT number or WMI number. Like, there's a lot more to it than like does it have a VIN and turn signals kind of thing. So at the federal level, no, but at the state level, there could be some states where, for example, in California, there are people that have registered Onyx mopeds as street legal mopeds. So there's some states where it's either close enough that you can do a few things to make it street legal, or like you just get someone that's kind of lazy at the DMV that day and stamps your paper.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that actually. It just depends who's working at the DMV that day, and
100%.
sometimes you can just like slip something by them. You don't even have to like you can just write down some number and print it on your bike, and there you go.
Yeah, the crazy thing is a lot of people think that there's like some master list somewhere of every VIN that is a street legal motorcycle, and at the DMV they just look it up to see if your bike is, but that's not how it works at all. When I registered my CSC City Slicker when it was like new in 2018, they had to like Google the bike and go to the site and figure out what it was. Like there's no
Interesting.
master database of this kind of stuff they're looking up at the DMV. It's just whether they want to stamp it that day because they think it's real or not.
Yeah, that's wild. It reminds me of my. I had a friend from college who had a drinking problem, and he, in the tri-state area, he got a DUI in New Jersey, and he just got a New York driver's license. So he started over. Just like
That's awful.
that's awful. It is. Thanks, guys. Always appreciate all the info. Oh, curious if to know if Micah sees these e-motos riding around China on his visits without any regulations. I would say China's got more regulations in my experience. What do you think?
Yeah, China has significantly more regulations, and for that reason, I've never seen anything like a Suron riding around in China. Actually, I've seen one Suron, and it was in like a dirt bike park. It was the first time I ever rode a Suron. Actually, it was in China at a dirt bike park. But you don't see them on the streets. They heavily regulate e-bikes there to the point where what we would consider an e-bike, you know, like an Aventon or Velotric or Ride1Up or Electrek, whatever, you don't see those either because they don't meet the specific requirements for e-bikes in China, which put them into a much more seated scooter class.
Yeah, authoritarian governments aren't typically, like Wild West situations, just typically. So,
Yeah, they're wild, but not Wild West.
right, wild in a different way. Let's see. Thanks from Easy E. Would love to see Emmy and its variants get released here in car dealerships and given massive rebates to get them adopted.
So
Uh,
the one of the Amis, I mean, like it's the same thing, but the Fiat version is supposed to be coming to the US. I don't know if it will, but they announced that it will.
yeah, I noticed your family had a Candy low speed
Golf cart,
vehicle
yeah.
golf cart. Yeah, how do you like that, or how do they like that?
It's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I have a few candy things. My parents have a candy UTV and they share a lot of parts. I mean, the UTV is more rugged, like it's better put together, it's more powerful and everything. Like a nicer frame. But in general, I've been really impressed with the Candy like golf carts and UTVs and stuff. From what I hear, they have like terrible customer service.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I've never had anything break, so I don't like I never had to test it. So that's a problem. But as long as it doesn't break, which none of my Candy stuff has, they've been working great for me, and I really like them.
all right, Slacker. Micah, did you ever complete your DIY moped motorcycle conversion from years ago? I was waiting for that too. What happened?
So it is almost done. It is in a storage unit in Florida that I really need to get out of there because I'm just paying every month for it to sit there. And the answer is unfortunately no, it is not fully finished. It's one of these projects, like several of my projects, that gets to 90% done, and then I get distracted by the next
That last
challenge.
10%, man, that's the hardest part.
But it will be finished. I'm very excited to finish that one. For those that don't know, it's a 19, I think it's a 1969 Honda Sport Cub motorcycle that I'm converting to electric and have been for quite some time. And I'm excited to finish it.
All right. We'll see you, Michael Smirzelis. I'm here too, but I have nothing to add. I've been reading the new Electrek article about the Outlander Electric. All right, that's a Mitsubishi, I believe. Need e-bike max 64-inch overall length to fit in elevator without folding. Probably means 16-inch wheels. Any tips on brands in the semi-compact space? I mean, those little Yozmas are really short, but I don't think that's what he's looking for. I would say a 20-inch foldable would probably be what overall six or Jackrabbit, right?
Yeah, so my wife has a folding e-bike with 20-inch wheels, like a fairly standard size one, and she fits it fine in our like small four-person elevator, just going in at an angle, like corner to corner in the elevator. I take my 20 or 27.5-inch, like a 700C wheel e-bike in that same tiny four-person elevator and just tilt it up on the rear wheel. But it seems like you want to keep it flat. But I still think most reasonable size 20-inch folders are going to fit, even if you have to do it like caddy corner in there.
All right. And the last is, unfortunately, we seem to have killed all the Fiat dealerships here. I think that was in relation to the low-speed electric vehicles. Fiats go plenty fast, but they're very small.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. But it was only like 5 months ago or something that I thought Fiat said their Topolo, I think is what it's called, or Topolino, which is their version of the Citroen Ami, is coming to the US. So that's
Oh,
that's
we'll keep
strange. It
an
was
eye on
pretty
that.
recent. Yeah, we got to look that up. All right, I think that's the end
Yep.
of them, right? All
Yep.
right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This was another great episode of the Wheelie Podcast to have you guys here with us. We'll see you next time in another